Moderator, are you ready? Well, yes, I am. All right, toss of 1. This character claims that her last name is Elliot after she collapses on a doorstep. The disheveled appearance of this character alarms Hannah, a servant who tries to keep this woman out of Diana and Mary's home. St. John Rivers offers shelter to this woman who fled Thornfield Hall after learning...
Jane Eyre.
For 10. Bonus. Archimago and Duesa work to deceive the Red Cross Knight in the first book of this 1596 poem for 10 points each. Name this 6-book poem whose title character, Gloriana, is an allegorical representation of Elizabeth I.
The Fairy Queen.
This English poet and courtier wrote The Fairy Queen.
Spenser.
Spenser's female knight Britomart was likely inspired by Bradamante, who appears in an Italian chivalric romance that Ludovico Ariosto wrote about this title paladin. Answer. He's Orlando. That book is Orlando Furioso.
Oh, yeah.
20 points. Toss-up 2. This event started when a deaf man named Black Coyote refused to give up a rifle. The site of this event was occupied by Dennis Banks and Russell Means in 1973. Historian D. Brown wrote a book titled Bury My Heart at...
Wounded Knee.
Wounded Knee. Bonus for 10 points each. Answer the following about majorities required in U.S. government procedures. In the event of a tie in the Senate, the holder of this executive branch position casts the tie-breaking vote.
Vice President.
Yes. Overriding a presidential veto requires this fraction of votes in both the House and the Senate.
2/3.
Yes. In the Senate, invoking this process requires a 60% supermajority. This is the process by which debate is brought to a quick conclusion, thus ending a filibuster. Answer.
No answer.
That's cloture.
That's it.
20 points on the bonus. Toss of 3, pencil and paper ready. Wilbur needs to find the value of x at which the first derivative of f of x equals 11, given that f of x itself equals negative 2x squared plus 3x minus 6. He first uses the power rule to differentiate f of x, then sets the resulting linear equation equal to 11 and solves for x. For 10 points, find the value of x at which?
-2.
Negative 2 for 10.
Nice.
For 10 points each, answer these questions about a cube whose edges each have a length of 4. What is the surface area of the cube? Answer.
106.
It's 96. What is the length of either of the cube's space diagonals?
Yeah.
Answer.
4 square roots of 2.
Say it again?
4 square roots of 2.
No, 4 square root of 3. What would be the radius of a sphere that had the same volume as the cube? You have 10 seconds. Begin your answer.
8.
I have cube root of 48 over pi. So, no. Nothing on that one. Toss up 4. Some species of horned lizards shoot this substance from their eyes.
Blood.
Yeah, for 10.
There's the blood.
Bonus. This organelle consists of a series of stacked folds known as cisternae for 10 points each. What cellular organelle is named for the Italian researcher who first observed it in 1897?
Golgi apparatus.
After the Golgi apparatus packages a protein into a vesicle, the vesicle is released from this face of the Golgi apparatus.
They already said that. They already said that.
Answer. It's the transface. Molecules packaged by the Golgi apparatus intended for transport to these organelles are tagged with mannose 6-phosphate.
Lysosomes.
Yeah, for 20. Toss up 5, pencil and paper ready. Teddy wants to find the radius of the circle given by the equation x squared plus 4x plus y squared minus 10y equals 0. He knows that he needs to get the circle equation in standard form by completing the square, and by moving his constants, he will be able to find the radius. For 10 points, find the radius of the circle given by the equation x squared plus 4x plus y squared minus 10y equals 0. And that's time. The answer is the square root of 29. Toss up 6. An immigrant from this country to the U.S. starts a blog named Race Tink in the novel Americana. A civil war in what is now this country is depicted in the novel Half of a Yellow Sun, which, like Americana, was written by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This present-day country contains the fictional villages of Umuafia, from which Okonkwo...
Nigeria.
Yeah, for 10. This author claimed, "Unhappiness has been my god," in a work he called A Few Foul Pages from the Diary of a Damned Soul. For 10 points each, name the simplest author of the prose poem A Season in Hell.
That's a Rimbaud.
That's...
Rimbaud.
Yeah, another poem by Rimbaud describes the wandering of a drunken one of these vehicles.
Boat or car?
No, train.
Answer.
A boat.
Yeah. Rimbaud wrote A Season in Hell and The Drunken Boat in this language.
French.
Yeah. It's French.
For 30. Gossip 7. These particles lose energy when they interact with charged particles in the Compton Effect. These particles and gluons are the only massless particles that have been observed. Gamma decay produces high-energy instances of this particle, which is the carrier of the electromagnetic force. Their energy equals the product of their frequency in Planck's...
Electrons.
-5. The product of their frequency and Planck's constant. For 10 points, name these quanta of light energy.
Photons.
Photons for 10. Bonus, consider a reaction in which a molecule A breaks into two parts, B and C, for 10 points each. The reaction rate has a linear relationship with the concentration of A, so this term describes the order of the reaction.
Series.
It's a first-order reaction. In the rate law for a first-order reaction, the rate constant is denoted lowercase k and uses this unit.
Kelvin.
It's 1/seconds, or inverse seconds. This nuclear reaction, in which a molecule emits a helium-2 nucleus, is an example of a first-order reaction.
Fission or fusion?
It wouldn't be.
Fusion.
Answer, it's alpha decay. Nothing on that bonus. Toss of 8. This city lost the naval battles of Cape Eknomus and My Lai. The city's founder legendarily measured out its entire area
Carthage?
for 10.
Nice.
Bonus, these vehicles are thought to be the first armored ships in the world. For 10 points each, name these modified Panoxion warships used by Korea. Their name comes from the fact that their protective coverings look like animal shells.
Turtle ships.
Yes, specifically turtle ships were used by this Korean dynasty, which reigned from 1392 to 1897. Sejong the Great was the fourth king from this dynasty.
Zhejiang. What dynasty was he from?
Oh, Joseon.
Joseon, yeah. Joseon.
Yeah. In the 1590s, turtle ships helped fight off an attempted invasion of Korea by this country's forces under Toyotomi Hideyoshi.
Japan.
For 30. Toss of 9. This thinker contrasted two forms of self-love, which he termed amour de soi and amour propre, in his discourse on inequality. A Savoyard vicar appears in a treatise on education by this man.
Rousseau?
For 10. Bonus. These works are numbered according to a system known as Stephanus pagination after a 16th century publisher who produced an edition of them. For 10 points each, give the collective name for these 35 works. Euthyphro, which addresses piety, is part of the early group of these works.
Plato's Dialogues.
It does.
Plato's Dialogues?
Yeah. In many of the dialogues, this teacher of Plato interrogates people about moral issues.
Socrates?
In this dialogue about the definition of virtue, Socrates teaches a slave how to double the area of a square.
Meno?
For 30.
Nice.
Toss of 10. A 2012 book by Akhil Amar argues that some precedents derive from the unwritten form of this document. The outlook known as originalism argues that this document...
The Constitution.
Yeah. Bonus, for 10 points each, name these friends and colleagues of John F. Kennedy. This Texan served as Kennedy's vice president. The year after Kennedy's death, this man signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
LBJ.
Kennedy supported this candidate in a special election for the Senate seat that Kennedy had vacated upon becoming president. This man held JFK's former seat until dying of brain cancer in 2009.
You think it is?
Senator?
Yeah,
Wait, it's a senator building.
Answer,
Yeah, no answers.
Ted Kennedy.
Oh.
This speechwriter for the Kennedy administration is credited with having actually written much of Kennedy's book, Profiles in Courage.
Oh,
Churchill?
No.
Answer, his name's Ted Sorensen. 10 points for LBJ. Toss of 11. The first micro-variant of these objects to be discovered is SS433, which emits synchrotron waves in the radio regime. AGNs known as blazars are thought to be these objects with their jets aimed towards Earth. A black hole accreting material at the center of a galaxy powers these incredibly...
A gamma burst.
-5. These incredibly luminous distant objects for 10 points. Identify these objects whose common name is a contraction of quasi-stellar objects.
Quasar.
Quasar for 10. For 10 points each, answer the following about general relativity. The theory of general relativity was developed by this physicist who won a Nobel Prize for his work on the photoelectric effect.
Einstein.
General relativity is a theory of this fundamental force, which it describes as the curvature of space-time by mass energy.
Yeah.
Gravity.
The analog of Newton's first law in general relativity is this equation. It is named for the curved space generalization of straight lines, which give the shortest distance between 2 points. Answer.
Distance function.
It's the geodesic equation. For 20 points? Sure, I agree. Toss of 12. The characteristic equation is found by computing this function, which can be found via expansion by minors. That process involves finding cofactors. This quantity that intuitively measures the size of a transformation is 0 for singular matrices, and they can be found if there is an equal number of rows and columns. For 10 points, name this number that for a 2 by 2 matrix is computed as AD.
Determinative.
For 10. For 10 points each, what is the smallest positive 4-digit number that is a perfect square, given that 31 squared equals 961? Answer is 1024.
Yes.
What is the smallest positive 4-digit number that is a multiple of 9? Answer, that's 1008. What is the smallest positive 4-digit number that is divisible by 4, 5, and 6? You have 10 seconds. Answer,
120.
It's 1020.
Oh, right. No, 4 digits, yeah. Look at that.
Toss of 13, so no points on that bonus. Toss of 13. Cyclopropane has 3 of these structures nicknamed for resembling a banana. The dative forms of these structures occur in coordination compounds. These structures can have a non-integer order in compounds that exhibit resonance. Differences in electronegativity determine whether these structures are ionic or covalent.
Bonds.
For 10. One unusual thing about this programming language is that the number of spaces or tabs used to indent a line has meaning to its compiler. For 10 points each, identify this programming language named for a British comedy troupe.
Python.
Yes.
Python.
Python's batteries included philosophy means it provides an extensive example of these standard collections of functions and data structures covering common needs.
What is it? Like tools maybe, or tools?
It's a library. More conventionally, Python uses this symbol to represent multiplication.
X.
Asterisk.
Oh, yeah, sure. An asterisk.
Yeah, for 20.
Sure.
Toss of 14. A bumper sticker about an election in this state read, "Vote for the crook, it's important." Decades before Edwin Edwards led this state, a politician from here had a 34-story high state capitol built and advocated a 100% tax rate on...
Louisiana.
For 10. Bonus, a police chief in this city named William Parker popularized the term thin blue line to refer to law enforcement. For 10 points each, named this California city that in 1965 was the site of the Watts riots.
Los
Los
Angeles.
Angeles.
Yeah. Los Angeles.
In 1992, riots broke out again in LA after police officers were acquitted of beating this African-American motorist.
Rodney King, right? Rodney King.
During those 1992 riots, 4 African Americans, including Damian Williams, attacked this white truck driver on live television.
I don't know.
Joe.
Answer.
No answer.
He's Reginald Denny. 20 points on the bonus. Toss of 15. This poet wrote about leaves that enter the new world naked, cold, uncertain of all, save that they enter, in the first poem in his volume, Spring and All. The speaker of another poem by this author says they were delicious.
William Carlos Williams.
For 10.
Give us.
The speaker of this poem claims to be familiar with many Western islands which bards in fealty to Apollo hold. For 10 points each, name the sonnet whose title refers to a 17th century translation of an ancient Greek text.
So I'm first getting chapter somewhere, right? Yeah, on first looking into Chapman's Homer.
Yes, On First Looking into Chapman's Homer was written by this Englishman in 1816, 3 years before he produced his great odes.
This is Keats, right? Yeah, Keats.
Keats compared the experience of reading Chapman's translation to the amazement experienced by this stout historical figure who stared with eagle eyes at the Pacific Ocean.
Cortez.
Yeah, 430. Toss-up 16. The slope of a regression equation is the correlation coefficient times the quotient of this value of the y variables over this value of the x variables. A z-score for finding the likelihood of people at least a certain distance away from the mean can be calculated by taking the distance from the mean over this value of the distribution for 10 points. Name this measure of how separated the data are, the square root of the variance
Standard deviation.
for 10. Bonus, the following questions ask about some of the measures of central tendency for 10 points each. Okay. Find the arithmetic mean of the following set of numbers. 4, 7, 2, 5, 7.
27 divided by
25 divided by 5 is 5.
Answer
5.
Yeah. Find the median of the following set. 5, 3, 7, 3, 8, 2, 6.
It's just 3, isn't it?
It's 5, right?
Yeah.
5.
5.
Median.
Find the mode of the following set. 3, 6, 1, 7, 4, 8, 9, 3, 5.
3.
For 30.
Good job.
Toss-up 17. In a legend from this religion, the earth expands to hold more men and beasts whenever the shepherd Jamshid presses a seal and dagger against the ground. A set of incantations against the evil devas is preserved in this face, Vendidad,
Just Hindu.
-5. Several of the gathas are recited during this religion's yasna ceremony. The Avesta is the primary corpus of, for 10 points, what dualistic Iranian religion that reveres Ahura Mazda,
Zoroastrianism.
for 10. For 10 points each, name these biblical women. This woman, who was exorcised of 7 demons, was the first person to realize that the tomb of Jesus was empty after the resurrection.
Mary Magdalene.
This widow seduced and beheaded Holofernes, a general who threatened Israel.
Judith.
This woman traveled with her faithful daughter-in-law Ruth from Moab to her home in Bethlehem.
Naomi.
For 30. Toss-up 18. This ruler rejected Machiavelli's The Prince in an idealistic...
Credit the break.
For 10. Bonus, for 10 points each, answer the following about American involvement in Germany after World War II. This 1948 and 1949 operation responded to a Soviet blockade of a German city. General Lucius Clay oversaw it.
The Berlin airlift.
Yeah, when Berlin was divided, American and Soviet tanks were stationed at this crossing point on the Berlin Wall. It is now in Berlin's Allied Museum.
Checkpoint Charlie.
Charlie, right?
Yeah, sounds right.
Checkpoint Charlie. Checkpoint Charlie.
Post-war Germany was divided into 4 occupation zones under this agreement of August 1945, which was signed by Harry Truman and Clement Attlee.
Did they do this in Yalta? No, they didn't.
It wouldn't be Yalta, would it? What would be another?
Answer
Yalta.
Potsdam. 20 points. Is that halftime?
It is.
Halftime.
Okay, at the half, I have 310 for Valencia, 175 for Chipola.
That's what I was going.
Okay. Toss-up 19. Discovering how this substance inhibits prostaglandin formation helped John Robert Vane win the Nobel Prize in Medicine. Immunoglobulins and this substance are used to treat Kawasaki disease. Childhood consumption of this NSAID can cause Rey syndrome. 81.
Salicylic acid.
No.
Aspirin. Because aspirin is made of salicylic
Yeah,
acid.
she's right.
Is anybody else looking at the questions?
No. Is
No.
that acceptable answer for aspirin?
Because I have
Here,
acetylsalicylic acid as the answer line.
I think that's correct.
But not
No,
just
that's
salicylic
salicylic
acid by
acid.
itself. The
It is made
acetyl,
of aspirin, though.
the acetyl part is I don't know anything about
Yeah,
science.
no, she's good.
You good? Are you sure? Because I'm not certain that that's the
Isn't
same.
it?
I mean, salicylic acid by itself is a skincare treatment.
But
It's not the
Yeah, I would
same.
listen
We have
to-
Asha in the back, so it's not the same.
So then you need a new, or do you?
So then do I need a new science question to read to just Chipola? Or?
I mean, I suppose that's the proper thing to do. I mean, because part of me would be like, I know they're going to get asked back. But I mean, I suppose we should be proper, right? So
Yeah, we might as well be proper. It's
fine.
the final.
We just read to them, obviously. So let's just do tiebreaker 1 science toss-up. So just give me a second.
Yeah.
I should have it.
Huh?
Is that an A?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's make triple sure we didn't read this right.
That's kind of funny. Well, not really. It's not science.
I mean, this is what you know about it.
Sure.
Yeah, so read that, and then when you're done with that, so that's all the bonus that you Yeah, I think good.
Sounds good.
Okay, so
For Chipola, the beginning of the Laramide orogeny occurred during this geological period. Santonian and Aptian are two of the subdivisions of this period whose name is derived from a word meaning chalk. Lewis and Walter Alvarez proposed the extinction event that ended this period 65 million years ago. This final period of the Mesozoic era followed the Jurassic period. For 10 points, name this geological period that is often abbreviated K despite its name starting with the letter C.
Cretaceous.
For 10. Okay, and now you get this bonus. A civet is a small animal from the tropics. For 10 points each, civets were historically raised and slaughtered to harvest their musk for use in this type of substance, including the original formulation of Chanel No. 5.
Perfume.
2016 reports revealed how Asian palm civets were being trapped and caged in inhumane conditions to eat and excrete berries to produce the Kopi Luwak variety of this beverage.
Coffee?
Yeah. China slaughtered thousands of mashed palm civets after they were confirmed to be a vector of this respiratory disease, which caused nearly 800 deaths in a 2002 to 2003 outbreak.
SARS. SARS?
For 30. Toss of 20. Pencil and paper ready. A class of unknown total size has a 5 to 3 female to male ratio and has 16 more girls than boys. One way to solve for the overall class size is to observe that if there were exactly 5 girls, a 5 to 3 ratio would mean 2 more girls than boys. Since there are actually 16 more girls, you can multiply the sum of 5 and 3 by the quotient of 16 and 2 to get, for 10 points, what total class size?
64.
64. 8 times 8. For 10 points each. Given the function f of x equals the quantity 8 minus x squared divided by the quantity x squared minus 9, find the following. The vertical asymptotes. Answer.
Negative, or x equals -1.
It's x equals -3 and x equals positive
Perfect.
3. Find the horizontal asymptote.
X equals -1.
So y equals -1, so horizontal asymptote. The x-intercepts in simplified form. Answer.
2 square roots of 2 and -2 square roots of 2.
Pretend. Toss of 21. In 1964, a ditch was dug in front of this building's east facade to showcase its Claude Perrault-designed colonnade. Its Richelieu wing was built by Napoleon III to connect it to the Tuileries Palace. This former royal palace at the east...
Versailles?
No, -5. At the east end of the Avenue du Champs-Élysées is now a museum whose entrance is dominated by a glass pyramid. For 10 points, name this museum that houses the Venus de Milo and the Mona Lisa. The Louvre for 10. Bonus at the top left of this painting, a crucifix is partly obscured by a green patterned curtain. For 10 points each, name this double portrait that depicts Jean de Dintiville and Georges de Selve standing on either side of a table that holds, among other things, a globe and a lute with a snapped string.
The ambassadors.
The ambassadors.
This German Renaissance artist painted the ambassadors during his work in and around the court of Henry VIII.
Holbein.
Holbein.
Yeah, the bottom of the ambassadors includes a diagonally stretched anamorphic one of these objects. French artist Eugene Delacroix created many paintings showing Hamlet addressing one belonging to Yorick.
Skull.
For 30. Class of 22. A native of this country wrote Ars Conjectandi and has a logarithmic spiral on his tomb. A geologist born in this country names the proglacial lake that covered much of Canada during the Pleistocene epoch. Albert Einstein's Annus Mirabilis occurred while he was working at a patent office in this country.
Switzerland.
For 10. Bonus, answer the following about paleontological finds in Germany for 10 points each. This close relative of Homo sapiens was discovered in a cave near Dusseldorf. It is known for pronounced eyebrow ridges and sloped foreheads.
Neanderthal.
The Messel pit near Frankfurt contains the remains of animals who were suffocated by massive clouds of this gas generated by limnic eruptions at nearby lakes.
Oh, CO2 or methane? I have to go methane.
Methane?
It's CO2. Many specimens of this transitional fossil between birds and dinosaurs have been found in the limestone of Bavaria's Solnhofen.
Gliders?
Gliders.
Archaeopteryx.
Oh, bird. Shoot.
It's okay.
So 10. Toss of 23. Pencil and paper ready. Alan needs to find the x-coordinate of the vertex for the function f of x equals x squared plus 6x plus 9.
-3.
Yeah.
Nice.
For 10 points each, given the function f of x equals the quantity x minus 3 squared minus 4, find the following. The axis of symmetry. Answer.
X is equal to 3/2.
At x equals 3.
Yeah, because it's 6.
Find the y-intercept. Answer.
5.
Yeah. The x-intercepts. Answer.
1 and -1.
It's 1 and 5.
Yeah.
So 10 points on the bonus. Oh, toss up 4. 24. Toss up 24. This man worked with Julius Rosenwald, an owner of Sears, to establish thousands of Rosenwald schools. He declared "cast down your bucket where you are" during a speech in Atlanta.
Booker T. Washington.
Booker T. Washington.
Nice.
Bonus, this man allegedly kept his 5-foot-long sword and a belt made of Hugh de Cressingham's skin for 10 points each, named this 13th century knight, who led forces alongside Andrew Moray during the First War of Scottish Independence. Answer. That's William Wallace.
Oh, yeah.
William Wallace defeated Hugh de Cressingham at this battle along the River Forth.
That's a bridge.
Answer.
No answer.
Stirling Bridge. Wallace disappeared for several years after he lost the Battle of Falkirk, during which time he may have visited this kingdom, ruled at the time by Hakon V. Answer.
Norway.
For 10. Toss of 25. Small interfering and this type of RNA are central to RNA interference. Monolithic and this type of Linux kernel were the subject of the Tannenbaum-Torvalds debate. Strong, weak, and this word name the main classes of gravitational lensing. This 5-letter word describes earthquakes with a magnitude of 2.0 or less on the Richter scale. When used as a prefix, this word can be symbolized mu and means 10 raised to the -6th.
Micro.
Micro for 10. Bonus, this letter precedes CDM in the name of the standard model of Big Bang cosmology. For 10 points each, name this Greek letter that symbolizes the cosmological constant.
Kappa.
It's lambda.
That's fine.
In physics, a lowercase lambda represents this quantity, which equals velocity divided by frequency. For visible light, this quantity is between 400 and 750 nanometers.
Wavelength.
Wavelength. A system in logic named lambda calculus was created by this American, who also co-names a thesis about translating real-world computations into ones involving a Turing machine. Answer. He's Alonzo Church. Toss of 26. This man was informed by Leos about an ambush set by the Pallantides, who opposed this man's succession to the throne. His father committed suicide after this man forgot to take down his boat's black Theseus for 10. For 10 points each, answer the following about the drawings of Leonardo da Vinci. Da Vinci's drawing of an ornithopter depicted a device designed to allow an individual human to do this. In Greek mythology, Icarus died while doing this.
Fly.
Yeah. This Leonardo drawing shows a naked male inscribed in an overlapping circle and square whose arms and legs are showed in two positions demonstrating classical proportions.
Vitruvian Man?
Yes. Some of Leonardo's caricature faces are given this 9-letter descriptor connoting cartoonish ugliness. Mikhail Bakhtin studied this quality, which literally means cave-like in literature.
Grotesque.
Yeah.
Grotesque.
Yeah.
Nice.
I know Chris wrote that.
Numbers on that.
Toss-up 27. Pencil and paper ready. David needs to find the x and y values that will solve the following system of equations. X plus y equals 5 and x minus y equals 1. He realizes the addition or elimination
3 and 2.
3 and 2. For 10 points each, solve each of the following equations. Negative 3x over 4 equals 18.
So 18 times 4, would that be 64?
72.
Answer.
What is it? 64?
This time it's negative 24. The absolute value of the quantity, x plus 8, equals negative 3.
That's no solution, right?
Answer.
Imaginary, so
No solution.
5.
Yeah. 4 times the quantity x minus 1 equals 4x minus 4.
Uh,
Or x minus 4. It's the same, right? Just one.
Answer.
Yeah,
1.
It's all reals.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
that's
that's
true.
10.
And can we get a quick score check of the 3/4 parts? I'm not sure I heard one of the bonus comments.
Sure.
I have 385 for Valencia and 330 for Chipola.
So they got 10 on the bonus after micro, I'm guessing.
The micro bonus, yes, they got wavelengths.
That's all right. So 385, 330.
330.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Toss of 28. A woman from this country took the pseudonym Erica Chambers to track a man known as the Red Prince. A group of Katsas from this country mistakenly killed a Moroccan waiter in Lillehammer. Operation Wrath of God was carried out by this
Israel.
Israel. In a televised interview, this woman struggled to name the naughtiest thing she'd ever done. For 10 points each, name this woman who has declined to step down as Britain's Prime Minister despite a disastrous snap election held in June 2017.
Theresa May.
The snap election caused May's Conservative Party to lose the parliamentary majority without allowing any other party to gain it, resulting in a parliament known by this 4-letter adjective.
Tied.
It's a hung parliament.
Yeah.
May was opposed in the election by this satirical candidate whose name refers to an item he wears that covers his face. His platform vowed to make the singer Adele a public asset. It's Lord Buckethead.
You know,
You gotta pay attention to the news more sometimes. It's fun. 10. Yeah.
All those out.
For Theresa May. Toss of 29. The consequences of this tradition were examined in a 1982 book by Richard Rorty, who developed a modern form of it. The concept of the cash value of true beliefs was investigated in a book that called this tradition a new name for some old ways of pragmatism. Bonus. Ticelio warns that the title objects of this work need to be near water when they are peeled. For 10 points each, name this opera in which the witch Fata Morgana curses the prince of clubs to desire the title fruits.
Love for 3 oranges.
This composer of the Love for 3 Oranges scored Sergei Eisenstein's Alexander Nevsky, one of the few film scores in the standard repertoire.
Prokofiev.
A narrator plays a key role in this work for children by Prokofiev, in which an oboe represents the duck.
It's like Peter on the Wolf, right?
Yeah.
Peter on the Wolf.
Yeah, 30 points. Toss up 30. Pencil and paper ready. The average score on a special test of knowledge of wood refinishing has a mean of 53 and a standard deviation of 6 using the empirical rule. For 10 points, find the range of values in which about 68% of the scores will lie.
$41 to 65.
No, no penalty.
47 to 59.
47 to 59.
That's how it's done.
Alright, bonus for 10 points each. Use the empirical rule to answer the following questions. Find the percent of the normal population that is more than 2 standard deviations above the mean. Answer.
2.5.
Yeah. If the mean of a test is 70 and the standard deviation is 6, what percent of the population will fall between 58 and 76? Answer.
68.
It's 81.5.
Ah, yes.
Approximately what percent of the data will fall within 3 standard deviations of the mean? Answer.
97.
99.7.
Ah, yes.
10 points for 2.5. Toss-up 31. 2 Indian employees helped Edward Henry create a system for classifying these things. IOPHIS is a searchable national database of these things. Wilhelm Lozer used aqua regia to help John Dillinger attempt to destroy these things. They...
Currency.
No, -5. They can be detected using superglue vapor or via dusting. Loops, arches, and whorls are common features of, for 10 points, what unique physical features often collected using an ink pad?
Fingerprints.
For 10.
Right.
Bonus, to appease British interest during World War II, this nation's king replaced his Axis-leaning Prime Minister, Ali Mahir. For 10 points each, name this nation that was the base of British operations in North Africa and the site of 2 battles at El Alamein during World War II. Answer.
Egypt.
Yeah.
Ah.
This king who fired Ali Mahir was the last king of Egypt. His pro-British actions provoked a 1952 coup.
Let's go over.
Answer.
No.
His name's Farouk the First. This officer in the coup went on to succeed Gamal Abdel Nasser as president of Egypt in 1970.
No.
Answer.
No.
Sadat.
Yep.
Anwar Sadat. 10 points for Egypt. Toss-up 32. On an electrocardiogram, the wave symbolized by this letter represents ventricular repolarization. Serine and the amino acid symbolized by this single letter name a type of protein kinase that phosphorylates certain hydroxyl groups. A base symbolized by this letter is a pyrimidine and is replaced in RNA by uracil. For 10.
T.
Yeah. The sigma factor is needed for the start of this process, which can begin at the TATA box. For 10 points each, name this first step of gene expression.
Like differentiation.
It's transcription.
Oh.
The process of gene expression includes transcription, RNA splicing, and this other step in which messenger RNA is used to synthesize protein molecules.
Translation.
In bacterial transcription, this Greek letter, which names a protein factor, precedes dependent and independent in the name of transcription termination mechanisms.
Beta.
To go beta.
Answer.
Beta.
That's a row. 10 points for translation. Toss-up 33. This character rejoices when his associate Tubal tells him about a shipwreck near Tripoli. Enemies sometimes spit on this man who exclaims, "My deeds upon my head," after he listens to a speech on the quality of mercy. Lorenzo elopes with this man's daughter Jessica, who then converts.
Shylock.
Shylock. This character's fiance Haman stabs himself after he sees that this character has hung herself. For 10 points each, name this character who is condemned to death for burying Polynices against King Creon's wishes.
Yeah, you're right.
Antigone.
This sister of Antigone initially refuses to help with the burial, but later unsuccessfully tries to falsely confess to it in her sister's place.
Electra.
That's Ismene. Antigone is commonly grouped with Oedipus Rex and Oedipus Ecolinus in the Theban plays of this ancient Greek dramatist.
Sophocles.
420. Toss-up 34, pencil and paper ready. Melissa needs to find the slope of the tangent line to the graph of y equals x to the 4th minus 3x squared plus 2 at the point 1, 0. She remembers from calculus finding the slope of the tangent line involves taking
-2.
-2. For 10 points each, find the derivative of the following functions. Y equals the quantity 4x minus 1 cubed. Answer.
12 times quantity 4x minus 1 squared.
Yes. Y equals cosine of 4x.
-4 sine of 4x.
Yep. And h of x equals cosine of x divided by secant of x. Answer.
2 cosine of x sine of x.
It's -2 cosine of x sine of x. So 20 points on the bonus. Toss-up 35. A viral photograph by Justin Hoffman depicted one of these animals hauling a Q-tip The inability of these animals to open their mouths widely restricts them to pivot feeding on small copepods when in captivity. The males of these animals usually produce prolactin since they nurture eggs in a pouch from which they give birth.
Seahorses.
Seahorses. Bonus, answer the following about animals from around the world that can be seen at San Diego Zoo for 10 points each. Many of these carnivorous marsupials that are known for their fiery disposition are currently suffering from DFTD, which is a facial tumor disease. These animals are named and primarily located on an island located south of the Australian mainland.
Tasmanian devils.
Although they sort of resemble a zebra because of their white and black striped hindquarters, these animals that are native to Central Africa are actually the only living relatives of the giraffe.
Okapi.
Just as alpacas are the domestic form of the vicuñas, llamas are the domestic form of these South American camelids, whose name comes from the Quechua language. Answer. They're called guanacos.
Yeah, that's it.
Everybody learned something new today. Toss of 36. Igor.
Oh, do you want to do a score check before then?
Sure.
Fine. 520 for Chipola, 460 for Valencia.
Ooh,
I got
400.
400.
I got 400.
Also,
Right,
my
right.
0 just looked like
Look
a
at the
6.
6. Okay.
Okay, toss of
Love it.
36. Igor Gazyenko defected to this country in 1945, exposing Soviet spying techniques.
North Korea.
-5. This country's plan to create a jet plane called the Avro Aero was halted in 1959. A future leader of this country won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1957 for suggesting a solution to the Suez Crisis. Lester Pearson was the Prime Minister of, for 10 points, what country that in 1949 added Newfoundland as a province? Canada. After this person became vice president, Dan Coates replaced him in the Senate for 10 points each, named as running mate of George H.W. Bush. Answer.
No.
That's Dan Quayle.
Yep.
Quayle and Coates represented this Midwestern state in Congress. Joe Donnelly is this state's current senior senator. Answer. It's Indiana.
Cool.
And in the 1988 presidential election, Bush defeated this Democratic candidate. At the time, this man was the governor of Massachusetts. Anything?
Mondale.
It's Michael Dukakis. And that's every
The
question.
final, we have 530 for Chipola, 395 for Valencia.
Sit down, like,
Good match.
here.
Good match.
Bring it.
Yeah,
Come here.
Give us all.